Welcome to this episode of Truth Seekers, where His Grace Bishop Emilianos of Meloa will answer questions sent in by the youth with a member of the youth.
Hello Faye, thank you for coming here today. Would you like to tell us a few things about yourself?
Thank you for having me here, Your Grace. My name is Faye. I am a graduate, so I studied a Bachelor of Law and Theology, and I work at Liverpool Parish, and I'm 23 years old.
Okay, thank you Faye. I've got a question here for you.
Okay.
So the question says, married or monastic? How do we understand our calling? Any practical ways to help us decide? What do you think?
Good question. You yourself would be the perfect person to answer because you are a monastic. So I'll try. The first thing that comes to mind would be all are called, but few are chosen. And I think that we're all called to be saints. And we go through various different paths and vocations in our lives that lead us to communion with God. That looks different for everyone. And I remember you sharing when you were speaking about your Yeronda Emilianos. And forgive me, I'm not sure if he said it or if you said it, but there was a discussion there about how if you ignore your character and you ignore the calling from God and you choose something of your own free will, because we all have free will, ultimately it won't work. And I think that practical elements would be, of course, discernment, prayer. That's the only way that we can listen to God, and that's the only way we can talk to God. And ultimately He will show us. And it's the same with monastic communities. There's different spirits and there's different elements that create that community. And I think that when we discern what's right for us, God will ultimately show us the way. And if it's meant for us, then His will be done. And same with marriage. So I think that we can fulfill the will of God as a married person as well. I don't like to think of it as just monastic or marriage, because there are so many different paths in our lives, and we're called to God and we're called to be saints through every different path. So ultimately, will we end up married or monastic? I think it depends on the person, of course, but I think that if we can trust God enough, we can empty ourselves, then He will show us the way, because it's not for everyone. Both paths of life, married or monastic, it's not for everyone. I think that firstly we need to understand or practice prayer. We can say we can have so much discernment, so much prayer, but ultimately what does that look like? With, of course, the guidance of our spiritual father, attending services, reading the gospel. These all help in building that prayer life. And we can't kid ourselves by never praying and never seeking Christ and then asking Him the question, marriage or monastic. I don't think they collaborate well if we just jump in that one direction. So I think it's a process that we have to really consider. We can't ignore our character. We have to really know ourselves. And if we choose something because we think ultimately it's going to please God, then that's not freedom, and that's not truth, and that's not what orthodoxy is, ultimately.
Yes, I agree, and everything you said is correct. Now, what I would like to sort of add is a little bit from a personal experience. When I was at school, I never thought that I would become a monk. It was something that wouldn't cross my mind. It was not my priority. Then I ended up meeting my elder Emilianos, and I thought for myself that, what do I want out of life? I want to be saved. Where will it be easier for myself? If I have a family or if I go to the monastery? And the answer for me that was, to save my soul for myself, it would have been easier if I went to a monastery. But saying that, I sort of looked around, not too much, but I looked around a little bit, and I was not comfortable in any other monastery other than Simonopetra, but that was me. And that's because there it was not just Gerondas Emilianos, but it was also, I found a spirit of love, happiness and joy that I never thought that can exist within monasticism. And Gerondas Emilianos used to say something very important. If you cannot be successful in the world, you cannot be successful in a monastery. So you can't just go to become a monk because this is your last choice, because you have nothing else to do in your life. You will fail. And of course, it's a matter of character. Some people are, for some people it's easier if they want to choose this path to become monks, and for some people it will be more difficult. But you have to find, with prayer, as you said, the right spiritual father and the right environment if you were to become a monastic. Other than that, the only thing I could say probably is that if our heart really desires to find what's best for us, it will be given to us, the answer will be given to us. There is a part of the gospel that says, "Ο αγαπών με γνώσεται." The one who loves me will end up knowing. This means that regardless if you have a geronda or if you understand a calling or not, if you really love God, He will show you the way. He will lead you where you need to be. He will get people around you to tell you things that they will help you. And the end result will be that you will find the easiest path for your salvation. And this is what matters. When I went to the monastery, I never thought that I would become a bishop. It was not something I ever looked into. It was not something I ever tried to achieve. It was not something that crossed my mind. But as you said, you mentioned somewhere about self-emptying, about emptying ourselves. If we do that, then I guess it doesn't matter what we will end up becoming, married or unmarried. What matters is that we will be filled up with the Holy Spirit, and then regardless what we will become, it's something that will lead us to our salvation, and through us, God will help others around us.
Geronda, I have a question.
Okay.
Myself and my friends, we've all experienced a very similar thing where we've stayed at a monastery and it's fantastic, it's spiritually rewarding, but we know deep down it's not for us. And that transition of coming back into the world, coming back home, is a very difficult transition that I don't think we're prepared for. What do you think that means?
Even if someone has the calling to become a monastic, it has to be the right time in the right place. Usually we don't allow people to come visit and stay for the rest of their lives because it means that the transition from the world to the monastery is not smooth. So usually we tell them you can come for a week, and after a while you can come for a week, and after a while for 10 days, and after a while for a couple of weeks, and after a while for a month. But this is what happens with the engagement as well. It's a trial. And the engagement, as well as someone to be a novice in a monastery, happens for the only reason that it can be broken without destroying anything, because there are no promises given. You have the freedom and you're testing the waters. And if you don't do that, then you can't commit because you're not certain how you will feel for the rest of your life. And this goes both ways. So if you're engaged, your partner also has to make sure that everything goes smoothly. If it doesn't, it means that you need to change direction, you need to find someone else. And it's easier to do this then, instead of doing it down the track if you will have a couple of children and you create problems in your family and you create problems in their lives and they don't know us anything. Why would we do that? The same thing in the monastery. If you see that it's not the right time, it's not the right place, or you're not 100%, you can go back to what you were doing, and then if God brings a different scenario in your life, you continue until you understand that this is what it is, and you're 100% soul. And if you are engaged, your partner is 100% soul. And if you're in a monastery, the monastery is 100% soul, that you fit there. You're a good match with the rest of the sisterhood or brotherhood. And this is when you understand that you click. And once you click, that's it, you clicked. Yeah, until we get to this point, we should not despair, because it means that something is not ready yet. And it might not be us. For example, there are lots of things changing in Australia at the moment. It might not be the right time yet for some people to take a position in the church, but it might be the next thing that happens. We don't know. Until then, we have to keep ourselves available and free and pray, and God will open our eyes when the time is right. But of course, when you like something and you're not 100% sure, it could be either engagement or being in a monastery. When you change and you go back to your previous life, it is hard, but it doesn't really matter. You do it for Christ. You stay there for Christ, and you move out for Christ. And you do it with full conscience that you only want God's will to be done in your life. So it doesn't matter what this is. And I always say this, we have to leave ourselves in God's hands. And once we do, you will float and you will end up where you should be. And that's it.
Thank you, Yoranda.
That's right.